Welcome into our Osceola studio and welcome to Seminole Sidelines. Another great Sunday to recap. Yet another great Florida State win, a dominating win. Florida State 44, Boston College 14. From the start, the energy in the house, Doak Campbell was packed. The Seminoles had a great start, scoring on all their drives to lead off the game in the first quarter, dominated the line of scrimmage. This felt like a game that Florida State was fired up for.
Yep.
Took it to BC right from the get.
Yeah, one of the keys to the game for us going into it was a quick and fast start. We thought this was a team that Florida State should dominate. It's early in the season, so you don't ever know what the true version of any one particular team is. But Boston College had really struggled early in the season, and as you said, just a resounding victory. Returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown. Trey Benson, who went on to have a spectacular night in many regards. And then, of course, you get a 3-and-out by your defense and then score your first 3 offensive possessions. And the route was on. And really, it was never in doubt pretty much from the get-go. And an impressive win, and we talked about it in our keys. We wanted to see Florida State come out and have game control. That was one of Kurt Weiler's keys of the game, and obviously the kickoff return got that going. And then, of course, Mark Salva is going to jump in here with us in a second. But one of Mark and I's keys of the game, and as you might well guess, it was close to the line of scrimmage, the offensive and defensive lines, and FSU really did dominate from the get-go. Even there, BC was down 3 starters. They're not very good on the offensive line, but just Florida State's credit, they were down their best 2 defensive linemen, Fabian Lovett and Jared Verse. And listen, Florida State ran for 180 yards on 35 carries. BC only had 5 tackles for a loss versus BC versus 10 tackles for a loss versus Louisville. We saw improvement there. Defensively, BC had 95 yards rushing, but only 43 through the first 3 quarters. And then we started seeing some backups come in. And obviously, Florida State dominated 6 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks, and we'll get into some other key defensive stats as we move on. And then, of course, Mark, you said that Zay Flowers could not bloom in this game, and he did not. He is one of the top 25 receivers in America statistically coming into this game. Was held to 7 catches for 45 yards, and of course, Phil Jerkovic, their quarterback, 15. I think had 15 to 23 for 105 yards. So they really did do all the things. Last week, Mark, none of our keys hit against Louisville because the game was such a roller coaster, topsy-turvy, unpredictable thing. And we have 5 people that vote on our keys every week. Just about everyone was right in what they said, right? I mean, Jerry started with atmosphere of the crowd, and then all the way to game control and line of scrimmage. But Mark, just get your overall thoughts on the game, and we'll break down the offense and defense as we move along.
Yeah, I think going into the game and just hearing the language from the coaches during the week, just kind of the attitude, I think they felt like they were going to have an opportunity to really do something special in this game in terms of how they were going to dominate the game, how they could control the line of scrimmage, how they could control the game. And so going in, I think a lot of the talk was about getting off to a quick start, getting your foot on their throat, not letting them up. And I think the guys really bought into that. And it was obviously with the opening kickoff going for a touchdown. But, I think we talked about this last night, Pat, is that the thing that really stuck out to me is how Jordan Travis has really matured as quarterback and how he's got total control of this offense, how he's mastered the offense. You notice we never have, those cheap penalties, those time penalties of, not getting plays in and not getting people lined up and all that kind of thing. Offsides are very minimal. I mean, all those kinds of things when you have control of the offense, we're doing so much better on this year to this point. So that to me is what really sticks out. And I think we kind of expected to dominate, up front. And I think we all said that we thought the backs would have a big day. And of course, Trey Benson had a huge day. But they all had their moments. So, yeah, it was just an overall great performance offensively and defensively. What we hoped, what we expected, and they were able to pull it through.
Well, I think one of the keys that we are missing here, Mark, is the fact that Mike Norvell allows former players to come and do a legacy walk on Fridays through the stadium before the game, or on Friday nights before they go to the team hotel. And you had the opportunity to speak to the team on Friday night as you were back with us for another second week in a row. Kind of talk us through what that experience was like, not only with Mike, but with the football team. And obviously, as all of our listeners and watchers viewers know, you're a former Florida State offensive lineman. So tell us what it was like to be a part of the Legacy Walk and what you told the team.
Yeah, that's a really cool deal. So, when Mike first got the job, he had all the former players on a Zoom call, and he had said he was going to implement this. He's called a Legacy Walk. And so before every game, there's an opportunity for former players to come out. So when the players come out of their afternoon meetings on Friday, before they get on the bus to go to the hotel for the night, he brings the players out on the field, and then he brings all the former players that want to participate out on the field. And he tells the players that when they lock arms, walk,
all right, we're going to get back with Mark. We've got a little technical difficulty with Mark. We'll get back to him in a second. Obviously, Bob gets them off to a 4-0 start. It's probably made a little sweeter this weekend by the fact that Florida and Miami both lost. And I think both dropped out of the polls. And for the first time since 2018, people found themselves around lunchtime learning that Florida State is now a ranked team again for the first time since 2018. And 23rd in the AP, 22 in the second. Tell us a little bit about, what you thought or what you felt when you saw that. Obviously, validation for Mike Norvell and his staff that the program is trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it is validation. I mean, this is the hard work that they've put in through the offseason to get to this point. And I think there is a lot of, when you are an unranked team in the preseason, it takes a couple extra wins to get into the top 25. And it definitely, you thought it might happen after the Louisville win because it was a primetime Friday night game. And it felt like they were trending in this direction. Yeah, I think when you are a Florida State in a state like this and you are winning at this rate, you've earned that opportunity to be in the top 25. I know there's a mix of fans who are proud, happy that they're in, but they want to see more. They want to see this team go even higher in the rankings, and that opportunity is going to come. I mean, you've got your toughest stretch is coming up in October here.
Yes. So,
with these next three teams coming up, I mean, between Wake, NC State, Clemson, if you can navigate that, probably not going to go 3-0, obviously.
Right.
But if you can stack some wins here, continue, hey, the rankings are going to take care of themselves.
They certainly are. Listen, there's no shame in not being ranked early because all that matters is where you're ranked as you get into the season. Hey, Mark, we got you back. We were just following up on the fact that Florida State found itself in the polls for the first time since 2018 today. And, of course, we should have mentioned that in the intro, but we did not. But to go back to your point on Jordan Travis, both of you have already mentioned him, but Jordan Travis had a career night, 321 passing yards. The offensive line did a great job. Not always perfect. We saw him throw some dirty pockets, but he didn't get hit very much. And then when he had one rush for 16 yards, which I think speaks volumes to the fact that of the maturation of not only Jordan in the offense, but the talent around him, and the fact that they don't have to rely on him as much. But just talk a little bit about Jordan. I mean, he just really seems like he is in control of that offense.
And we should say this is the third different offensive line starting combination just this year. And I believe it's the 17th now since Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins have come here just 2.5 seasons ago.
Yes.
It's pretty crazy. You have that natural attrition, guys graduate, but you've had so many injuries. You've had to plug in guys. Robert Scott was in a boot pregame. You had to move Darius Washington there. Mr. Versatility. It's great to have a guy like that to slide into various positions. But yes, for Jordan Travis to still feel really good, despite a new left tackle, to still feel really good with Jazz on the right side, who's developing as your right tackle. And yes, Maurice Smith is back kind of in that center spot where he's held down quite well. Jordan looks very composed, even on what we think is a bad wheel.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like a bad wheel at all. And that first quarter run was like wow, this guy is not hurt. Hurt a little, able to play, able to still make some big plays. If he didn't play even the second half, that's his fourth best game of his career through a half. So what Jordan's able to do, very, very efficient, and then get the ball to the guys to make those efficient plays become explosive plays.
Yeah, listen, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he is in the third year of the same offense. I think is equally as important that he's been surrounded by more talent. We'll get into that a little bit in a second. But, Mark, just your thoughts on Jordan. You talked about him in first impressions last night, but he continues to impress you with his play. What did you see that you liked on Saturday night in Doak Campbell Stadium?
Well, I think the most impressive thing is his ball placement, the accuracy of his throws. That first 4th and 9 throw to Cam McDonald, that was a touch throw that was a tricky little throw. And he executed a high level touch pass to poke the end there. Was a huge one. The several throws he made were just right on point. And you know, going into the season, that was the biggest question we had was, could he develop as a quarterback well enough to put balls in spots that we were going to need? Because if we were a one-dimensional team, we were going to have problems. And so for me, his development as a passer is just it's beyond my expectations for sure. I didn't know that if he could do that, and I said it last night, and I really mean it. I don't know that I would take anybody else right now to be quarterback of this team. Just looking around, I mean, even guys like Bryce Young and
all right. Well, Mark, you're breaking up on us again. Bob, I do want to throw it to you. You're a guy that has, since the time we've been working together, loves to pay attention to the receivers. And previous 3 years, it's been kind of hard for you. I feel bad for you when we're at practice. But listen, Florida State completed passes to 8 different receivers again last night. Yeah. Again, we had another new player step up as the star. Darian Williamson, 5 catches for 98 yards all in the first half. We did not see him in the second half. We will find out more about that as we get into the week. And then Ontario Wilson, 3 for 85. You mentioned Cam McDonald had 2 long catches. He's, because of what they're surrounding him with, seems to be turning into a guy that you would think as a mid-range threat, secondary level, and then he's catching passes down the middle. Just talk about what you've seen out of the receiving core, and I would have to think that it's exceeded your expectations at this point in the season.
Yeah, I think Ron Dugan's kind of said in the preseason, you're not going to know which week, which guy is going to step up and be the main guy. And then are you still going to be cheering on the sideline when you only got 1 catch and everybody else is having a big game? Are you still going to be that selfless guy who's going to appreciate the moment for your teammate? So we've seen Kentron has a big game, then it's Pokey, then it's Johnny Wilson, Darian Williamson on Saturday against BC, and Cam McDonald has the 2 big downfield catches. He's benefiting. He went from a 10-yard per catch type of guy to a 20-yard per catch just because the pieces around him feel a little bit different, and defenses can't focus on every element of what the offense is throwing at them. So this is what we've kind of been waiting for. The consistency. We're not seeing as many drops like we used to. Right. That's what was frustrating us week in and week out. It's sort of like those blocks that drive Mark Salva crazy. Those lookout blocks, or the oh my God. We're not seeing that anymore. These are the real positives. The consistency, the competition has really been elevated within the room. And Ron Dugans gets a big gift in Hakeem Williams on Friday night too. So I think the positives are starting to stack for the receiver group.
No one's had a better week. There's been a lot of people that had great weeks, including Tate Rodemaker, but no one's had a better week than Ron Dugans. Maybe a better season right now than Ron Dugans. But listen, Mark, we talk all the time about complementary football, right? And certainly you want your offensive team to complement your defensive team and special teams, but there's also complementary football on both sides of the ball, and I think that what we're seeing is that the offense, it was very balanced on Saturday night, almost half and half run to pass, a little bit more pass in the first half than some of us anticipated. I thought they would come out and try to throw over the top and take an early lead, and they did. But listen, we see that complementary. This is complementary football and offense, right? 1 week it's Johnny Wilson. The next week it's Darian Williamson. Last week it was Trayshawn Ward running the ball. This week it's Trey Benson. So there's some complementary factors going on. But, Mark, just talk about how important that is to an offense to be able to do that and what it does to opposing defenses.
Yeah, well, the beauty of the offense, the way it's designed, for me anyways, is that we have so many different ways to attack. I mean, we are equally committed to run the ball as well, and in a variety of different ways. And really, when you think about it, a lot of these tunnel screens and some of those things, those are just another way to. Some people call it another way to run the ball, right? I mean, they're really just short tosses and catch and runs. And so, a lot of different ways to attack, a lot of different weapons we have in terms of the running backs. the receivers, jet sweeps, and then you have the downfield passing game, the play action, the RPOs. I mean, it's just a variety of things that you can do with a variety of different people. It's hard for a defense to really hone in on what they want to take away, you know. And so our offense gives people a lot of problems, and it offers us the ability to give a lot of different solutions depending on what the defense of the day is. Whatever their plan for us is, we have options on how to do it. And a perfect example was Louisville. When Tate came in the game, we were able to go to with the two tight one back personnel and really control the game that way. And that wasn't necessarily a primary game plan for us, but we were able to do something that helped us win the game when the quarterback changed. So that's just one example of a way that the multiple sets, personnel groups, types of plays that we have really enable us to attack a defense.
Well, I'm just looking at some numbers. I'm trying to set up a question for you here earlier, but Bob, I want to go back to receivers real quick. Darian Williamson, 5 catches on 8 plays. That's fairly. It's
a good batting average.
Yeah. They were using him effectively. There's no doubt about that. All right, so Mark, I want you to talk a little bit about the play of the offensive line, and then my follow-up question to that would be, we thought we might see a ton of players come off the bench. I don't think we necessarily did that, but we did see Julian Armella in the game, Lloyd Willis, Brian Courtney, the tight end. We did see some guys that normally would not get time. I believe that Bryson Estes was in the. Bryson Estes, and then Zane Herring. We saw a lot of guys come in towards the end. But talk about the offensive line. Number one, the starting unit, and number two, the importance of, even if these guys are just getting 8 to 12 snaps in a ball game, how important that is to their development. Should they be called on down the road?
Well, I think the most important thing for me is that we look like we've settled into a starting 5, 5 or 6 really, when you consider Darius having to start with Rob Scott being out. But for the most part, for 4 games this year, we've had Jazz, Dimitri Emmanuel, Smith, and then Gibbons, and then Rob Scott, and now Darius Washington. And so the ability of those guys to play together consistently really helps an offensive line, because now it becomes a lot of feel, a lot of trust, a lot of communication things, and the nonverbal communication that you just automatically know by virtue of having played together a significant amount of plays. And so for me, that's an important part of the development of the line. Now, getting these young guys in at the end, I think what made me feel good was that after we scored that first touchdown in the 3rd quarter, getting Travis out of the game, that was key in getting Tate in. And so, you want Tate to experience some success and have, a good group of linemen in the games to be able for him to have some success during the course of the game. And so by virtue of that, I think, we kept our starters in a little bit longer for Tate. And then I think Armella came in first, and then Estes came in, I think, the series after. And those 2 guys on the left side really did pretty well when you saw Trey Benson score that last touchdown you had Estes and Julian in the game. So a great experience for them to be able to get in the game, to be able to execute and have success. That was really critical, giving them confidence. As much of that as you can get, better, right? Especially for you young guys. So you just continue to see the growth of this group as the season progresses. And the more opportunities we can get like that, that'd be great. These next 3 games can be a little bit harder to get them in the game, but at least they now have some experience.
Bob, did any of the young kids stand out to you in the mop-up time?
I've been waiting to see Rodney Hill get into a game besides Duquesne, because you watch him in practice and say, this guy's got to get in on special teams, on some kind of kick return, punt return, something. The guy with the ball in his hands is a playmaker, but he's also got 3 really good running backs in front of him. So how do you manage that? I thought BC was a good opportunity to get a guy like Rodney in there. But also then you start to question, as a coach, do you manage that 4-game redshirt rule?
Right.
Or do you just get guys developmental time and then see where the chips fall as injuries throughout the season might kind of adjust how your depth chart goes.
Yeah, and I think they're both. I think part of those, both things are true.
Yeah.
I think you are trying to manage the 4 games, and I do think that you're looking for opportunities at the same time because you might. I mean, if you got the opportunity to take advantage of those 4 games, it certainly helps in development because it's full speed. It's against the guy that's not going to brother-in-law him at the point of attack. I mean,
Right,
you're going to have to earn it. So, yeah, I listen. I was glad to see they got some younger guys in there, but certainly an impressive offensive performance from Florida State, rolling up over 500 yards of total offense, and just about everyone having success when they got their hands on the ball. But we are going to take a break and listen to a message from one of our sponsors, Alumni Hall, and we will be back in 30 seconds to talk a little bit about a dominating defensive performance for Florida State.
Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days, or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store. Alumni Hall.
Welcome back to another victorious, might say kick-ass edition of Seminole Sidelines after Florida State's resounding 44-14 win last night against Boston College. Listen, as dominating as the offense was, so was the defense. We've talked a little bit about the stats, but barely over 200 total yards for Boston College in this game. As we've talked about, dominated the line of scrimmage, Bob, dominated the airways. Zay Flowers, 7 catches, 45 yards, 105 yards for their best player, Phil Jerkovic. And really, they ended up with 95 total rushing yards, but as we know, stats can sometimes be misleading, and they've got the vast majority of those yards, over half, in the fourth quarter. They had 43 yards worth of rushing through 3 quarters. Just an outstanding night for the defense. PFF had Florida State down for 22 pressures on Jerkovic. We thought they might come and try to pressure him early, make him uncomfortable. They certainly did that. He started 1 of 5. That pass that he completed was at the line of scrimmage. Didn't get credit for a yard. So, Mark, I'll start with you. Overall thoughts on defense. Who stood out to you?
I mean, overall, it's just a great team defensive effort. Obviously, the defensive line were able to pressure. You know what? The other thing, too, we blitzed early, and we blitzed more than we had in the past. And we brought it from the secondary a few times, which is something that we haven't done a whole lot of. I kind of like that. I like the way we kind of went after them a little bit. And I think it was just the confidence we have in our coverage guys. And the other thing that really sticks out to me, and one thing I've really noticed, especially the last couple of games, is that we don't see guys out of position as much as we used to. You know, we talk a lot about Kailyn Deloach and the plays that he's making. And what really sticks out to me is that he's in position to make those plays. You know, he's reading his keys. He's aligning himself, in a spot where he's in a position to make those plays. Same thing with the secondary. Those guys are a lot of times in a position to make a play, break on a ball, make a tackle, minimizing the opportunities of the other offense. And to me, that's a huge improvement from the past that has really made a huge difference in the way the defense has been able to execute. But in terms of guys that really stick out, I mean, it was just a great team effort all along. I mean, we covered Flowers, tackled him in space, pressure on the quarterback. I thought it was just a great team effort overall.
Yeah, PFF had them down for 22 pressures. We thought they might come in and pressure them early. They did. Bob, just to get your overall assessment on the defense, the game plan, the way they performed, and obviously then I want to get to both of you on, you've mentioned Deloach. I want to talk a little bit about him, but some of our breakout stars on defense.
I think we have to consider the quality of the opponent and the caliber of the offensive lineman you're facing. It's a young guy, say a redshirt freshman type. But I thought Derek Mcclendon really stood out, putting a lot of pressure there. He had 5 tackles. This was a game that you felt like Derek was kind of building towards something like this. This is a good moment for him, I think. Overall, I turned to Kurt Weiler at one point in the box and said, we need to start researching Mike Norvell and Adam Fuller's best defensive games since they got to Tallahassee, because BC was sub 200 yards late third quarter, early fourth quarter before some of those garbage drives. And honestly, with the exception of, say, UMass last year, this is up there for a total offensive yards allowed by Florida State. So this is a quality performance all around. Again, without Jared Verse, without Fabian Lovett,
yes.
without Amari Gaynor.
Yes.
You're down a couple guys. Amari Cooper is still kind of coming back from an injury, although he had a great interception in the game. I think he was reading that Zay Flowers, the ball that tipped right off his hand.
He did, yeah.
Jerkovich threw it in a really bad spot where it should have been toward the sideline, but it was on the inside. But still, Amarian makes a great play. So even though you're shorthanded, a lot of plays were made consistently, and some of those big takeaways too.
Yeah, and Mark, you mentioned Kailyn Deloach, and listen, he deserves the credit. It looks like Florida State's now developing a second quality linebacker as in addition to Tatum Bethune, but his development kind of reminds me. I think he's a little bit more physically gifted than Emmett Rice, but Emmett was moved around a little bit. When Mike got here, they finally put him at a position at linebacker, moved him from defensive end, and he'd been everywhere: 3-4 defense, 4-3, then a 4-2-5. But I remember asking Mike, "Listen, we keep on seeing this guy develop, and to me, Kailyn has gotten better and better each week." You're right. You have to factor in who you play, right? We talk about that all the time. It does matter who you play. But listen, Mark, to me, he continues to play. We talk about Jordan playing more confident. Kailyn seems to be more confident and playing more naturally within but within the structure of the defense. Just talk about a little bit about what you've seen from him.
I was going to exactly say that, Matt. I mean, he's one press conference too. He's got a lift to him that he's wanting to be a great player, and he has command of the defense much in the same way that I was talking about Travis having command of the offense. Like I said, he knows where to see him dictating, the fronts and moving guys around and making sure, that everybody's in the right spots. I mean, I think the biggest compliment you can give him is that he was the guy we picked last week to be the spy on Malik, the quarterback from Louisville, right? And a huge responsibility. And he did okay. But let me tell you something. That guy, I didn't know he could run.
Yeah, he can definitely run.
Really quick. He's moving at the snap of the ball. He knows where he wants to go, and he goes there at full speed. And like old coach buddy of mine used to say, he gets there in a bad mood. So, liking what I see, we're going to need him to be past these next couple of weeks, along with Bethune. And just looking forward to see how he continues to grow and perform.
Yeah. Well, listen, we wondered if the addition of Tatum Bethune, if that would draw people up to his level. It certainly seems like it has, whether it's that's part of it or this is, obviously Kailyn deserves some credit for his own success, as does Randy Shannon, obviously. But listen, he's a guy that has gotten better and better. And to your point, Bob, Derek Mcclendon, very solid, 2 weeks in a row, has quietly gone about his business. It kind of reminds me of what we saw from Dennis Briggs before he got hurt. The numbers did not always indicate exactly how influential he was in a game, and he's a guy that second leading tackler on the team with five stops, and then of course you need him right now. You're down Verse, and he has stepped up.
I think I've said this pretty consistently throughout the last couple of months, but the patience that the staff has in player development, not just in the younger kids, but in the older guys. These were guys who were here when Mike Norvell got here, but they've embraced these guys and just been very, very patient in development. Derek Mcclendon is, fourth-year player, and now we're starting to see him put some of these performances together. They need that. They need Dennis Briggs. They need Derek Mcclendon. You need the younger guys, the Patrick Paytons, to develop too. And Pat Payton had a great game too.
Well, yeah, he did, and that he looks like a kid that, and he will continue to get bigger as he does. Is just going to be more of a force. But his ability to bend and get around the edge was remarkable. I wish I had his PFF pressure stats. I believe he had about 3 pressures, but certainly a guy that was very productive. Brendan Gant.
Yeah.
Had a hell of a game on special teams against Louisville and carried that over to plays from scrimmage. He is a heat-seeking missile that is playing a little bit more under control. Same with Deloach. Deloach is, that seems to have that surefire aim now. But certainly another guy that had a big game. 5 tackles for Brendan. I think he had a tackle, led the team in tackles for a loss with 1.5. So again, another guy that is developing. And I think sometimes we get into too big of a rush. I want to see these guys play as redshirt freshmen or redshirt sophomores and forget that the transition from college football is different for everybody. And you need some of these guys to develop late, particularly with the transfer portal now. You don't want everybody to come in and be able to play right away. And I say that facetiously, but...
Yeah. But and you need a guy like Brendan Gant because you're shorthanded at linebacker, too. Even though you are a 4.25, you don't have Amari Gaynor out there. You did lose Tatum Bethune briefly at Louisville. You need to keep developing. And Brendan Gant, who was candidly behind some other safeties last year, slid him up to linebacker. I think it's a very natural slide the way college football is right now. You can kind of get away.
Play in space.
Exactly. And so Brendan Gant has been praised pretty consistently for his special teams play. He's been praised for, in a limited role. I think it was 10 snaps against Louisville that he got, but they were very happy with him. Said he would get more opportunities against BC and moving forward. By necessity, here's a guy who you have confidence in developing at a new position.
Well, and you've got to love what it does for Mike, because whether it's true or not, he can go and say that this guy earned his playing time from the line of scrimmage by what he did on special teams.
Yeah.
Now, it may not be true. It may just be the natural, organic development of the linebacker position and where they were in the game and from a personnel standpoint, but it certainly gives Mike, hey, you know how this guy earned his way on the field? By getting after it on special teams. And Mark, how big is that for, and Brendan Gant, it's not always true, but it may be in this case. We don't know it. How, just talk about Brendan Gant and what you saw from him.
Yeah, another dynamic player, guy that really can help us. A runner and a hitter, and you need as many of those guys as you can get, right?
Hey, Mark, we're losing again. I'm gonna we'll check back with you in a second. All right, so let's move back to the secondary. They the one thing that Boston College could do was throw the ball, and obviously it was complimentary football. There was a lot of pressure on Jerkovic, but we saw Jamie Robinson again had another good game, 3rd or 4th on the team in tackles. Didn't have a lot of tackles, but one of his Renaro Green's tackle early in the game really kind of set the tone for the defense. I think. I mean, he really got after it. But just talk about the play of the secondary.
Yeah, I think Renardo makes these hits that kind of make statements, and you are aware of it as a receiver. I think Jamie Robinson, we've seen him have some, let's say, up and down performances so far, but Jamie rushed off the edge.
Yep.
I think he had some good pressure there. Jamie's a guy you can move around. I know he's been kind of compared as a poor man's Derwin James type. By no means saying that he is anywhere near Derwin, but the way you can move him around and utilize him in different ways, off the edge, in the box, a little bit deep, ranging to the sideline, I think you're seeing some guys who are being used very effectively by the defensive staff. I'm happy to see Omarion Cooper back because, again, Jerry Jones was a guy who was kind of inconsistent, trying to take on a more expanded role. When you see Omarion Cooper in there more, you feel a little bit better about lining up against a Zay Flowers type because you don't feel like that guy is going to win too many of the battles. He's going to get his, but 7 for 45 yards, you feel like you won that overall.
Yeah, and there's no doubt he's one of the stats, he's playing on one of the worst offenses in America and is still one of the leading receivers. So I think what they did to shut him down and shut Jerkovic down was fairly impressive. Listen, we saw some guys flash. Azaria Thomas got in late, certainly took advantage of it, was making plays all over the field, had a great read on a reverse. Now, they were in man coverage. I'm still not sure he shouldn't have gone back behind the line of scrimmage to follow his guy around. But, listen, he took a chance. Maybe that's what his assignment was, but he chased the guy down and made a tackle in the backfield. So that was fun to see. Shaheen Brown continues, another kid that has started proving himself on special teams, and we're seeing more and more play from scrimmage. And Shaheen had 2 tackles on the game, and again, and actually this is interesting. His 2 tackles were a sack and a tackle for a loss.
That's not bad.
So, yes, and he's a safety. So, they were bringing the pressure on Saturday night, and it certainly paid off. But, again, a great performance for the defense. Looking at some other guys that had some big games. We mentioned Jerry and Jones. I am glad that the targeting call got wiped away because he did duck his head, but there was really no contact. And listen, that's such a hard call to make. But the list of guys young guys that played, Daniel Lyons was in there. Sam McCall got his most extended playing time of the game. We even saw some guys that normally don't play, some walk-ons in the ball game on defense. Again, Aaron Hester was in the game for the first time. Bishop Thomas. I think they played almost 30 guys on defense, which is not normal in a particular game. So that should be invaluable as they move forward. But just talk about any of the younger guys that stood out to you.
Yeah, I think these are good opportunities for guys like Bishop and Daniel up front. Dante Anderson got a couple snaps too. When the game is going to get out of hand like this is where you've got a chance to rest some guys. Use some of the younger players. They're, again, coachable moments. You get some good film. You get to have a coach review the film of what you did right, what you did wrong. These are really good moments for young guys. And again, you don't know when you're going to need them in more expanded roles down the line. And like Mark said earlier, these next 3 games, we may not see very much of any of them. But at some point down the road, they may very well be needed. Yeah,
and we'll get into those 3 games as we get a little bit further along. Bob, do we have any? We asked for questions from our viewers and our subscribers. Do we have any questions that we want to talk about before we go to our next commercial break?
Yeah, I think one that we had that we were kind of kicking around just as we were starting to get rolling here is just the second half.
Right.
How do we feel about the second half performance, given that the score was pretty much tight, 14-13? Ryan Fitzgerald misses the extra point, so technically BC did outscore Florida State in the second half. Do we feel still good about what some of these reserves, some of these third-teamers, walk-ons did in a Power 5 opponent setting, or is there any concern there?
No, I don't. Listen, the game was in hand, right? You're playing guys that have never played together very much, and a lot of defense is about playing together, right? Know where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there, know where your help is from. Do I have inside leverage, outside leverage? Does somebody coming from the outside to help me make this tackle? So listen, those guys, a lot of those guys, they had probably never been in a team drill together, 11 on 11. I mean, and I don't read too much into it. Football is a game of emotion. All the emotion, the air was out of the balloon by that point. I mean, they had done nothing. Again, 45 yards worth of rushing through 3 quarters, 105 yards passing for Jerkovic, and he didn't have that through the third quarter. So, no, I don't put too much stock into it. You had a lot of guys that are playing for their first time, probably some of them did not even understand what they were. I'm not saying that they didn't, but you're going to have some blown some assignment mistakes when you're playing for the first time. And plus, those guys are nervous, right? So, no, I think that you got to give those guys some reps to settle down just like you would anybody else. I mean, we've seen some of the younger guys that have taken Tate Rodemaker, perfect example. It took him 4 or 5 games before he really got settled in. Go ahead, Mark.
I wouldn't say concerned. I wouldn't say concerned. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't say concerned is really the word here. I think we understand where they're at. I mean, we're trying to build depth. We're trying to get back to where we used to be in the Kentucky Derby days when you could just throw the second team out there and the drop.
Yeah, listen. At the end of the day, they had.
We're not there yet. We're just not there yet.
You gave up 85 yards in the fourth quarter, so most of their offensive yardage came in the fourth quarter. They had 86 total yards. They had an 86 in the third, 85. So they got the vast majority of the yards came when it did not matter and when you did not have your frontline players in. Do you want those second teamers and third teamers and even beyond that they were play up to the starter level? Yes, but that's not realistic. It does not happen. Go watch an NFL game when the starters come out, and there's even a bigger drop-off at the NFL than there is in college. But anyway, listen, I'm not overly concerned about it. I was happy to see those guys get some reps, and they needed them. And more than anything, some of the Florida State frontline players needed to get some rest because of what we're going to talk about after we come back from a break from a very busy FSU ticket office.
Hey Seminole fans, tickets to Florida State football games are now on sale. Right now, you can pick up single game tickets, 3-game packs, and season tickets for the 2022 season. Home games include Florida, Clemson, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Boston College, Louisiana, and Duquesne. Have fun this football season with your friends and family, all the while knowing your ticket purchase is funding FSU's success. Call your ticket rep today at 850-644-1830 or visit Seminoles.com. That's Seminoles.com.
All right, we are back for our final segment of Seminole Sidelines, and there's a couple of storms brewing in Tallahassee this weekend. This upcoming weekend, we got the storm brewing with our undefeated Seminoles getting ready to take on a ranked Wake Forest team, and we'll get into a little bit of Wake Forest. And then, of course, there's the one opponent, Bob, that is undefeated, and that's Mother Nature. And we have a storm brewing out in the Gulf, Hurricane Ian, I believe. And I believe that there was reported out that the ACC was meeting today to talk, I would assume, not to make any decisions,
Right.
just contingency plans, what their options are. But anything that you can advise us about there that we should be paying attention to.
Yeah, I think this is one we have to monitor, for the safety and well-being of all of us, as well as what's going to happen with Florida State athletics and the football game. It's really early in the week to decide, to see any firm decisions being made. We've kicked around all kinds of options. Do you move a game to Wake Forest? Do you move a game to Jacksonville? It's all just talk at this moment as we kind of wait and see what the track is of the hurricane. Ian, it's definitely going to go into the Gulf. After that, the cone is extremely wide and somewhat difficult to project. So we'll see what happens moving forward. Obviously, you want to get this game in. You don't want to move around the schedule. Mike Norvell loves the schedule and where the bye weeks are. Nobody wants to have another bye this early. We'll just have to see how much the storm says about that.
Well, plus you got a lot of momentum rolling, and you got it at the toughest part of your schedule coming up. What we think is going to be the toughest part of your schedule, with Wake Forest, then at NC State, then back home against Clemson. But let's talk about the task at hand, which is a 3-1 Wake Forest team who took Clemson into double overtime. There was not a lot of people thought they could do that. I mean, there were a lot of people thought Clemson was going to go in there and blow them out. And that's not what they turned into a track meet, which may be what we have next Saturday if there's no rain. But listen, Wake Forest 3-1 has a very highly productive offense, particularly in the pass game. They put a lot of points on the board, 14th in the nation in scoring, 42.8 points per game, 16th passing offense in the nation with 313 per game. And then probably the more important factor for Wake Forest, despite all that, is the fact that they have Sam Hartman back. He missed the game early in the year. He is the top-rated passer in the ACC from a production ratio, and 8th best passer in the country. And then he has a plethora of receivers to throw to. A.T. Perry, 16 catches. Taylor Moran, 16 catches. Jamal Banks, 15. Dorian Green, 14. Keyshawn Williams, 10. When I looked at their stats, I was kind of surprised that A.T. did not have more because he is one of the better players in the ACC. But you've got to get ready for that offense. And listen, they do have some deficiencies. They have not been great running the ball, Mark, but they have not been. They ran for over 100 yards against Clemson, and if you'd gone to Vegas and said Wake Forest is going to run for over 100 in Clemson, I think a lot of people would have said you're crazy. Now, it wasn't dominating on the ground, but it was effective because of what it did for their pass game. But do you think that gave Wake Forest, maybe get Wake Forest some more confidence in their run game, what they did against Clemson? It was 39 carries, 110 yards, so they didn't average very much, but does it give you any pause that they kind of got it going against Clemson?
Well, absolutely. I mean, because when they tried to run it was late in the game, when the game was on the line, and they were having some success late in the game. And look, that scheme has always given us trouble, gives everybody problems. It's just the way they prolong that mesh point and how the offensive lineman blocked that play. And then, of course, the RPOs off of that just gives people a lot of problems. They don't have to run it a lot. They just have to stick that ball in the back's belly and affect the whole defense with the way they prolong that mesh point. That's where the issue lies with them. And then Hartman is just so smart and just, again, another quarterback that has mastery of what they try to do and understands exactly everything that's going on. in that offense. And so, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned because, I mean, when they wanted to run it, they were effective running the ball.
Yeah, they were, and I was a little bit shocked. Now, again, a lot of carries, but it's what it did. It's complementary football. It was they needed it to be effective. It was. It does give me some concern coming into next week, particularly if we don't know what's going on with Fabian Lovett and Jared Verse,
Exactly.
two of your most dominant players. So, Bob, did you get to see any of the game as far as what you saw from the Wake Forest offense?
It's fun watching Sam Hartman when you're not playing against Sam Hartman, because that slow mesh, he is the perfect quarterback to execute exactly what Dave Clawson wants to run. And it is just like if you were building the right quarterback, the right mindset, the guy who can read the defense, who can make the right decision. It's Sam Hartman. It's very much a veteran guy who in the end has the running backs who can get a few yards, but he has the receivers 1 through 5. I think they said in the broadcast the very same thing. Dave Clawson feels like this is his best receiving core, not just an A.T. Perry, but all the way down the list. He's got options, just like Florida State has options too. So some similarities there in terms of how much depth you have at receiver. Does this feel like it could be a track meet? It very much does.
Yes.
Does Florida State want to be in track meets and in shootouts? No. This just might be what you're in for unless the rain kind of puts a damper on that scoring attack.
Well, hey, I don't know that Jared Verse is coming back, but if he was, it'd be great. They've given up 10 sacks, which is 91st in America, so you'd like to take advantage of that. I do want to ask both of you this question. And just we're 4 weeks into the season, and obviously in football, time tells the tale. You got to get 12 games into it before we know how good any one team is or how any one good player is. But much was made of this being a big year for quarterbacks in the ACC. Are we seeing on Saturday at Doak Campbell Stadium the two best quarterbacks in the ACC?
You go, Mark. What do you got?
I'm going through the list here in my head. I definitely think Jordan's one of the top, the way he's playing. And, I think so. The kid at NC State, I haven't watched a whole lot of him this year, but they're winning games, so they haven't played anybody real tough, so it's hard for me to say. The kid at North Carolina, who's a freshman, he looks pretty sharp. But he's having to sling all over the place because their defense isn't very good. So, it's a product of them being desperate. I don't know. But in terms of leading the team and competitiveness, I don't think there's any question. I think Jordan's the best competitor.
I think what Mark said.
There,
Exactly. Competitive leaders, veterans, the way you're executing exactly what the offensive coordinator and play caller, like Norvell Alex, I can want from you. I think we're seeing, let's say, at least 2 out of the top 3.
Yeah, I throw Leary in there.
Yeah.
But listen, I do think this. I think both teams, both Florida State and Wake Forest, they are driven with some intangibles about it. I mean, the guys that surround them both offensively and defensively believe in those guys. They believe they're a better team when those guys are in the ball game, and that's something that you can't put a stat on, can't put a finger on. But Mark, we both played offensive line, and for an offensive lineman, when you love your quarterback, it's different than a guy that you just like or maybe don't have a lot of respect for. I mean, I don't think you always play hard, but it's a little bit different. So I think that probably maybe what separates them from some of the other quarterbacks in the league is the fact that they do have the undoubted belief of their teammates.
Yeah, I think I don't know if you heard me what I said, but I think what separates these two guys is their competitiveness. I think they're the two best competitors, definitely, in the ACC, and maybe even the country. I don't know. I mean, they really are the heart and souls of the team. And so I agree with you. When you have a guy like that who leads, and from all indications, Jordan's not a rah-rah guy, but he does lead by example. And the fact that he came back from his ankle injury and did what he had to do to practice on Wednesday so he could play and pushed himself to do that, that's a great example of leading by example.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I said before, I wouldn't trade Arkansas for him.
Yeah, they're with the kid we got here is the Warriors, no doubt about that. Coming back from whatever his injury is or was quite impressive given what we saw on the sidelines at Louisville. Listen, we'll come back later in the week with how you think Florida State should attack Wake Forest's offense from a defensive standpoint. Moving over to Wake Forest's defense, Bob, this is why I say it's going to be a track meet. Listen, they're right around mid-pack in every statistical category. They're not awful. They're not great. They're somewhere in the middle. They're 69th in total defense, 66th in rush defense. Probably the one thing they do, and of course this got the Clemson game, which went into double overtime, kind of took this average up. I would like to see what their average is in regulation play, but they're 93rd in scoring defense. But they gave up 51 against Clemson, and they played essentially 2 extra series, which you're going to give up points traditionally in overtime because you're starting at 25. But listen, it looks like FSU should be able to have some success on offense. I'm anticipating if the weather's not bad, we're not impacted by tropical storm or Hurricane Ian, I think it could be a very entertaining game for fans in Doak Campbell Stadium on Saturday night. So, and then just guys, any early things that you want to look at that you think will be keys to the game? And we'll get into the details later, but Mark, anything that you would think would be a key to this game?
Yeah, I mean, our defense against their offense, we have to disrupt that mesh. I was thinking back to the days of when we used to play the freeze option, and guys would talk like Tommy Frazier and in that Nebraska freeze option. What made us effective against them is when guys were in the backfield while that ball was in the back's belly. If we can figure out a way to disrupt that mesh on defense, be a key to disrupting their offense.
Hey, Mark, we're losing again, so I'm going to switch back over to Bob. Bob, anything that right now, one key that sticks out in your mind for Sunday?
Can we get our guys to miss?
Hey, Mark, you're breaking up on us. We're going to get back to you. You're breaking up. Just, Bob, your key.
I think it is obvious, but takeaways. I mean,
Yeah.
Florida State has had more takeaways in the last couple of games. If you can have a couple of possessions that don't end with a field goal or a touchdown, that would be beneficial in what we think could be a game that goes well into the high 30s or maybe low 40s.
Well, listen, the atmosphere in Doak Campbell was pretty wild on Saturday night. I think part of that's because it's Saturday night and everybody gets lubed up. But listen, if it was wild on Saturday night against Boston College, we now are coming in with a 4-0 FSU team ranked against a ranked team. I can't remember the last time it was a ranked versus a ranked team in Doak Campbell Stadium. At least 2018, right?
I mean, it could be Virginia Tech, Florida State to open 18.
Yes, but that would be the last one.
That would be the last one.
Yeah,
I can think of,
and I was not even working for the Osceola.
Yeah.
I didn't even go to that game. So, but anyway, listen, I think it's going to be crazy. Just talk about the buzz around Tallahassee the last several weeks.
It's been great to see and hear people are making plans to come back. Last week was Parents Weekend, now homecoming. Maybe you had this circled on the calendar for a while, but now you're really more excited about it. It's easier to make that drive. It's easier to pack the RV. It's more fun to spend the money. You're smiling, going to the game, smiling when you're leaving. And again, the bottom line, as Jerry Cutts wrote in his column, end of the week, more money. Ticket sales equals more money for Florida State athletics and for the boosters. It helps your bottom line as an athletic department. You're helping Florida State football. You're helping all the other sports too with that support. I think fans are very much, if you're not bought in full, you're very much excited and optimistic about what's ahead.
Yep.
Not that we haven't kind of seen that optimism. It's been a few years that you can really feel fired up about making that trip to Tallahassee.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm fired up because it makes family night that much more enjoyable. I don't get to see my family that's in Tallahassee that much or even talk to them that much, but the brief 30 minutes that we try to get together for a week has certainly made, and we have a lot more fun talking. But yeah, listen, I everywhere I go, I was in Jersey Mike's the other day and rented a guy that I've run into several times since I've been back in town, and all he wanted to do was talk Florida State football. These previous years, Right, see me. Hey, Pat, how you doing? But no talk about football. But so everyone's fired up about it. It should be a electric atmosphere for 3:30 in the afternoon. I really hope that storm gets out of here and does not impact the game in any negative way as far as it not being played in Tallahassee or anything like that. But because it should be, I would assume another sellout if it's not sold out already. It will be by game time. Who's Bob? You know who's carrying the game? ABC,
ABC.
Okay. All right. So listen, it's going to be a big time event. Tallahassee is abuzz. This has certainly created some momentum for FSU in recruiting. They had well over 100 players at this game, including several commitments for both the 2023 and 2024 classes. The response they have gotten for the atmosphere and for where the program is going from recruits has been remarkable. We actually have a story at the Osceola, FloridaStateRivals.com, that talks with reactions from recruits to the 4-0 start. We also, coming up this week, Kurt Weiler, Aria, and Roberto Aguayo will have their First and Knowles podcast. We will have our game preview. We will have Osceola Tailgate. We will have hopefully a Know Your Enemy this week, where we get a little inside information from Wake Forest beat writers to tell us a little bit more about what we need to know about Wake Forest as we head to this game. So the Osceola.com, FloridaState.Rivals.com. We will be back next week for another Seminole Sidelines. Bob, thanks for joining us. Mark, we appreciate you. You were with us late last night, and you're with us on the road going back home. And as always, Mark gets to sign us off.
Go Knowles, baby.
We'll see you next week.